All right. Well, we may as well start. I think I'll just, there's Jenny. Hello, Jenny. Right, well, hello, everybody. It's very lovely to be able to see some smiling faces on this webinar tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Kate Wiley. I'm a GP and I'm talking to you from Adelaide. And yeah, thank you all so much for taking the time to come along this evening. You know, I appreciate that we're all busy people and it's, you know, a thing to come along. So thank you. And those of you that are in lockdown, you know, I hope that you're coping okay. And obviously it's a very interesting time that we live in. Tonight's webinar is Climate Action for Health Professionals. Obviously, as health professionals, it is incumbent upon us to act in the face of the climate emergency, and we're going to talk about that tonight in our After Hours webinar. It's my absolute privilege to be joined tonight by three other people who work tirelessly in this space, who are going to join me in the presentation of the webinar this evening. So just to introduce them briefly, we have Dr. Kim Liu, who is a GP in New South Wales and very active in climate and health on the committee, the AMA New South Wales committee. I keep getting that wrong. Hi, Kim. And we have Denise Corchi, who is the Director of Doctors for the Environment. Denise has brought a wealth of experience in community advocacy and campaigning to our organisation since she started working with us a couple of years ago, and I think she's done a fantastic job, and I'm very happy to hear her speak tonight, to come out from, you know, behind the admin side and hear what she has to say. And also we have Dr. John van der Kallen, who is the chair of Doctors for the Environment Australia, and so obviously is living and breathing climate and health action. So welcome to you three panellists. Before I start sharing our slides, just a bit of housekeeping. People, if you're not speaking, can you please have your mic off? Obviously, if the mic is on, then you get all sorts of reverberation and we can hear what, you know, is on your television next door. So it really helps if you have your mic off. When the people are talking, if you can have it on the view that is the speaker view, because we've got 5 pages of people on this Zoom call, it'll be a lot easier to see who's speaking if you have us on speaker view. This is getting recorded and will get uploaded to the DEA website at some stage over the next few weeks. But just so you're aware, you know, if you've got concerns about being recorded, you might choose to have your video off. Saying that, when you're presenting these things, it's really lovely when people have their videos on, because you feel like you're actually talking to a human rather than talking to the little green dot that I've got at the top of my computer screen. So I'm very happy about that. Also, for GPs in the audience, this is worth CPD points. You should have been sent a link with your Humanitics registration, but I'll be putting that in again at the end into the chat. And I'd really appreciate it if people could please fill that in, because it shows the interest that we have in this area and gives feedback to the college that, you know, we really do need further education on climate change and human health. All right, so I am going to start sharing my screen now and we will start the presentation. Okay. Okay, so hopefully people can see that. If I can get a thumbs up from somebody, that'd be great. All right, so, oh, laser's not working. I'll just go back. So yeah, this is the number 6 in our After Hours webinar series, and it's Climate Action for Health Professionals. Before we proceed, we need to acknowledge country. So the nation that we call Australia is stolen land. First Nations people have never ceded their sovereignty of their land, and respect is owed to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations and First Nations people. I am joining you from Ghana land, so that's the land of the Adelaide Plains. Greetings to a group of people in Ghana is Namani. So Namani to you all. And I do think it's a sign of respect if people write the name of the land that they're on in the chat to show that, you know, sovereignty was never ceded. Tonight, we're going to talk about climate action for health professionals. We know that climate change is a health emergency, and it is incumbent upon us to act, to work together to treat the climate health emergency. We can act on a number of levels. We can act as a profession, we can act as practitioners, we can act as people, and we can act as political advocates. So the four of us on the panel are going to talk about, are picking off one each. And the first person to speak is Dr. John van der Kallen on climate action as a profession. So when you're ready, John, take it away.
Thank you very much, Kate, and good evening to everybody. So I'm John van der Kallen. I'm the Chair of Doctors for the Environment, and I've been tasked in a few minutes to talk about climate action as a profession. So I could actually probably do a whole presentation on that alone, but I thought that I would just illustrate the effectiveness that we have as doctors and as a profession with a case study that we were involved with from the very beginning. And for some of you out there, you probably recognise the photo in the centre because that's just on the outskirts of Gloucester, where the Rocky Hill coal mine was going to be proposed and built. So early on in that process, DEA was asked to come and present at a community meeting about the health impacts of having a coal mine a kilometre from their town. So the top photo there on the left is actually the Gloucester Soldiers Club, to which I was asked to come and present. And, you know, I've done a lot of presentations as a doctor over the years, but this one was quite a different setup. I really didn't know what to expect. It was just in the period that they were doing the submissions for the environmental impacts study. And it was really the first time that the community had heard about the health impacts from having a coal mine, as well as the health impacts from climate change. So as time went on, there was further submissions. There was lots of media. My colleagues, Gary Lyford and Steve Robinson, also did presentations to the community and media. So then the Planning Assessment Commission event came along, where people were able to present their concerns to the PAC meeting. A friend of mine, Julie Lyford, noted afterwards that the day of the presentations that I did as representing the medical profession, as well as Doctors for the Environment, really set the tone for that whole day. We highlighted the health impacts, and that entire day, people were talking about the health impacts. So the PAC meeting was concluded, and they subsequently gave their response and said that that mine would not go ahead. This then, of course, was the proponent of the mine took that decision to court, and that went to the Land and Environment Court, and New South Wales, the Environment Defenders Organisation was involved, and there was a big court case, and this resulted in the final decision that the mine would not go ahead. And one of the reasons it would not go ahead was because of its impact on climate change. So this was the first time in Australian law that any development had been rejected because of its impacts on climate change. It was a land-breaking decision. And of course, there was so many people involved. It was obviously not just doctors and Doctors for the Environment, but getting people to understand the health impacts of climate change was really crucial in getting that decision made. So this this represents us as a profession being able to have a significant impact on decisions. And as a profession, we've been doing that for many years. Kate, you could probably go to the next slide. And we've had lots of various ways of doing that. So I'm sure lots of you know about the smoking campaigns and seatbelt campaigns and the campaigns against asbestos. And these were all driven by the medical profession. And as a profession, we can do lots of things. We can do articles in our own medical journals, but we can also do articles in the media. We can work with government, so we can go and visit government like Ben and I did there at the meeting Kate Washington. But we can also mobilise the profession. And the centre photo there is Clancy and Amanda presenting a petition at Scott Morrison's office. And this was a petition about declaring a climate emergency, which many colleges signed on to. Down at the bottom left corner, there's an IPC meeting where Kath Wild is presenting regarding the Bylong mine. And at the bottom there is a public health conference where Helen Redmond was presenting to a community about the effects of coal seam gas. So as a profession, we can bond together and have significant impacts on the community. The photo to the right was at our DEA conference where the first dog on the moon presented about preparing for the impending climate change. So that was a really terrific presentation and fun. But also as a profession, getting together at conferences, etc., and bonding is also really helpful. Just the next one, Kate. So, you know, to summarise, we can sort of work with colleges and specialty groups, and many of those have been working hard to try and bring climate change to the forefront. We've been working with government and medical health services, and that photo on the right there is just the recently completed solar array that's on John Hunter Hospital, which has really been happened because of engagement with the board, and having a chair of the board who's really passionate about climate change. We've been working with the AMA and the profession, and the AMA, who represents about 30,000 doctors, is also working in the climate change space. We can educate the public, and we can liaise with many other organisations, and making it clear that health is really central to climate change and the reasons why we are trying to mitigate against climate change. Okay, just the next slide. So there was just one slide before that, Kate. Oh yeah. So, but we don't want to see this happening. And this is an amazing sculpture that was in Berlin. We don't want to be all just sitting around talking about this stuff and seeing the effects going on around us. So we need to have planning, and we need to then have action. So Kate, just my last slide there. And one of the big points that is recently being made by Zali Stegel is we really don't want the quiet Australians. We want noisy Australians, and we want noisy doctors to be telling the community about what is happening and what needs to happen to mitigate against climate change and to protect our futures. So we are a trusted profession. We've seen the recent IPCC report telling us that humans are the cause of global warming, and that extreme events are definitely linked to global emissions. But we still have the ability to reduce the impacts of global warming. But we need to really act now, and we need to act quickly, and we need to be really aggressive about making changes to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, John. And Kim, you're up. You're muted, Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Lu, and I've been working as a medical practitioner in Western Sydney for 32 years. And I'll go to the first slide. When you work, I became a climate advocate 6 years ago, and this is a list of the colleges that declared a climate emergency. And the Australian Medical Association declared a climate emergency in August 2019. And slowly, we've got 85% of colleges who now recognise that climate change is a health emergency. Next slide. So when I started practicing 32 years ago, I wasn't really cognizant of climate change. I realised that heat events were more frequent, and so I started getting worried 6 years ago. And during our Black Summer, and the next slide, and we were blanketed with smoke for 80 days, and there were temperatures up to 48.9, and this is flooding around where I work as well in Windsor in March 2021 to top it off. Climate change can be really overwhelming because you think, what can I do as an individual doctor when I see that it's such a systemic problem? Next slide. So I would say something did not turn out on the slide. Oh, what can I do as a GP? So 85% of Australians see a GP at some stage during the year. And this is data from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. Next slide. So this is what I did at home. So I sort of started a plant-based diet, supported local producers, tried to eat sustainably. I reduced my plastic waste. I've got an orchard at home now. And these are my kids who have supported me through my climate advocacy. Next slide. And when I could afford it, in 2015, I bought the energy system that made my house a micro power station. This is my Leaf, my electric car that I bought in 2019. Next slide. So what do you do when you've done all the stuff at home? You talk about it. What do you do when you care about climate change? You talk about it. This is my wall at work. Precisely opposite. The patients stare at this when they're not looking at me. So this wall represents what we can talk to our colleagues, our patients, our relatives about climate change. You approach them from where they sit. So if it's someone who cares about air pollution, I've got data about air pollution. So this is about 2,600 people dying each year from breathing in microparticulate matter. So this informs my patient so that they realise that, yes, fossil fuels not only increases emissions, is impacting our health now. So, and this newspaper is me and my daughter about a month ago in the Daily Telegraph. I've been in the Daily Telegraph 3 times now. And with the Daily Telegraph, you reach a population who don't normally read anything about air pollution and heat. And I've been in my local paper 3 times talking about my power bill and air pollution and heat. So if you have people who don't really care about climate change, you can talk to them about the cost of living. If they don't believe that there's a climate emergency, you can show them all the colleges that have declared a climate emergency. You can approach everyone from where they sit in terms of their level of understanding or their literacy in health and sciences. And I think I could talk to anyone about climate change because I've been doing it for 6 years. And you can approach anyone without making them feel threatened or being judged. And no one can be perfect because the system is not there for us to be perfect. So everyone's a hypocrite. Next slide. Oh, not the one in between. So this is where I work. This is Riverton Family Medical Practice. And this is built ground up. So we've got a very large water tank that flushes all our toilets. We've got the solar array on top, and we've got a battery system to back up our fridges. We try to use less paper. We try to deal with waste. And I'm very lucky that the 2 owners of the practice and the 14 other doctors really support me in my climate advocacy. And we try to live our practice in terms of the way we advocate for advocacy so that we're an example to other practices so that they can maybe see what we're doing and see that we're saving money. And as you can see from this building, it's also white and there's windows on all sides, so it optimally uses light as well. So we run a very sustainable practice. Next slide. So, you know, when we go through medical school, we know what high value care is. We know that if you immunize children, you do the colorectal and cervical screen. It's actually, they're really good screening tools. And we know that if we talk about tobacco use and alcohol use, that if we can actually cut our patients' addictions, that it will help their health in the long term, and chlamydia and gonorrhea screening and hypertension screening and obesity management. And all of these things, next slide. What happened there? Okay, so how a patient responds to any illness is due to the social determinants of health. Because when you go to medical school, you learn about the biology of disease, and you come out in the real world and see that social determinants of health are really important. So where people were born, where they go to school, where they live, and their understanding of the systems around them. So I have patients who are homeless and who live in poverty, who aren't supported. I have patients who have unstable housing, and basically all these patients have the greatest impact of climate change is in our areas where there is greater inequity in their circumstances. And because if you think about heat waves, smoke, floods, if you're poorer and you're in energy poverty, you're going to have the greatest impact from climate change. And with all our schools, we know that optimal learning is in 22 to 24 degrees. And we have so many schools that don't have air conditioning. Next page. Next page. So when I realized that there needed to be a systems change, that we needed to actually do more, our patients also need to be educated, and the way we practice also needs to reflect our values. So my patients are educated about heat and air pollution. And this is reflected in their chronic diseases management plan. And really, the reality of heat is that it impacts on every single patient. So it impacts on our patients with heart failure, with renal failure. The smoke impacts our patients with asthma and COPD. Heat impacts on medications, so that we know that heat can impact not just our old patients who are vulnerable, but a lot of patients we see with kids with depression, anxiety, ADHD, have medications that impact their ability to sweat. So all of these things need to be reflected in their chronic diseases management care plans. And we have to understand the social determinants of our patients. So if we have patients, we know that social cohesion makes the community more resilient. So we need more resilient communities during the impacts that are going to impact, like all the impacts of climate change and extreme weather, especially where I work in Western Sydney. We need more resilient communities with more resources. And really simple things also, like with the MDIs we use for asthma, we know that the 4% of the NHS in the UK, the greenhouse gases are from metered dose inhalers from Ventolin. So we know that powdered inhalers don't have the chlorofluorocarbons. So, and Kate has very kindly put on this diagram, which indicates that an inhaler is equivalent. The use of inhalers in London to Sheffield is equivalent to driving from London to Sheffield. And that powdered inhalers are much better. Next slide. So this is just a very busy slide. And these are all the things I've done over the past 6 years. And this is why I actually feel angry about what's happening with just reading about, because there's things that make me angry about climate change, and this is why I'm so passionate about doing what I do, because really in a way there's no choice about it. If you understand the crisis, it's so hard to just sit back and not try to be part of the systems change. And next slide. So, next, the one before that. So this is me angry. This is during the Black Summer, in front of, this is Where the Bloody Hell Are You, ScoMo? Protest was organised by Australian Parents for Climate Action, the other group I'm in, and the school strikes. And my daughter's is the kid with the blue hair. And I was so angry that day. It was such a hot day. It was a 40-degree day and the air was thick with smoke. Some of the old people who were there at the time really flaked out in that heat and smoke. It was just I was so angry that day, and I'm actually angry today about what's happening with our gas-led recovery. So I shall stop now.
All right. Look, yeah, thank you for that, Kim. And, like I reiterate, I agree. I'm angry too. And I think so many of us are angry. So many of us are mortified, actually completely overwhelmed by all of this. But I also like the way you touch on in your talk, the concept of social determinants of health and how much they impact on a person's ability to deal with the health stresses of the climate crisis, and that is that, climate change is a social justice issue. And then if we're not looking at that, we're not really understanding the full extent of the problem. Okay, so thank you for that on what we can do as a profession. And, we could do a whole talk on this one as well. And I think there's so much that we can do. I'm now going to talk about what we can do as individuals. So, and Kim, I'll just get you to mute, please, sweetie. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think one of the problems with this is we all look at this and we go, well, what can I do? This is this massive global problem and I'm just one little human, one little tomato on the vine. But fundamentally, we can all be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I think we can appreciate that, one person can be powerful if they choose to be. Greta Thunberg is one person. She's a hugely powerful person in our world. Scott Morrison, he's one person too, and he's pretty powerful, right? So, we can all do something. And fundamentally, what can I do? Do something, right? Everybody just needs to do something because we are alive at a very important time in human history and it is incumbent upon us to act. So I've got 10 things that I think each individual can do, and absolutely as doctors, we're powerful, capable humans, we can do all of these too. The first one is to learn for your climate. So look it up. While you're looking it up, use the Ecosia search engine because they plant trees with their profits. But, like looking at the latest IPCC report, I wouldn't read the whole report, but we can at least read the headline statement. We can read the Aim High, Go Fast report that Will Steffens just put out about climate tipping points. Will Steffens also talking at IDEA this year, just putting a quick plug in for that. And looking at the Lancet Planetary Health Journal is the place to go for health effects of climate change. They recently published an article about the views of health professionals on climate change and health. And what they showed is that lots and lots of doctors and health professionals are really aware about climate, but we're all a little bit shy when it comes to talking about it, which leads me on to number 2, which is to talk for your climate. So talking to each other helps us learn. It creates positive change. And, when we look at this report from Climate of the Nation 2020 from the Australia Institute, fabulous think tank, we've all heard of them, you can see 80% of Australians think we're already experiencing the impacts of climate change. 82% are worried about bushfires, 83% want us to phase out coal, 79% of us like solar. So basically 4 out of 5 Australians are worried about climate and they want us to do something. So we're allowed to talk about it. It's the greatest health problem of our time. Let's talk about it. And as I'm sure Kim does this a lot, you can weave it into your conversations at work. Someone's got a problem with heat, someone's got a problem with asthma, someone's got a problem in pollution, smoke, etc. We can talk about it. Number 3 is to eat for your climate, so less meat and more plants. This circle is the Eat Lancet, a plate from the Eat Lancet diet, and you can basically see that it's lots of fruit and lots of veggies and not a lot of animal food, but still some. By eating locally sourced in-season produce, that has impacts on food mileage, especially if you're eating food that gets flown in, so like asparagus from Mexico, for example. By going organic, you reduce nitrogenous and phosphorus waste, which impacts on planetary health. And by not wasting food, you're reducing your methane emissions. And we know that methane is a majorly powerful, potent global warming gas and its own problem. Now, I know that no one can read the small print on my square on the right, but what it is greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of food product. And this line across the top at 60 kilos of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilo is beef. And then the second line is lamb, and then that's cheese, and that's the dairy herd, and that's chocolate, and that's coffee. And then we've got chickens down here and plants, you know, fruit and veggies down the bottom. So a plant-rich diet is something that we can all be doing ourselves, and we can all advocate as a healthy diet for our patients. Number 4 is to water for your climate. So by being water wise, you know, if you're fortunate enough to own your own home, get a water tank, have garden design that avoids water runoff. And obviously don't buy bottled water. I mean, buying bottled water is basically just buying plastic, and that plastic ends up somewhere down the chain. You know, it ends up in the ocean, or it ends up in landfill. And, you know, too often it ends up in the belly of some poor creature who didn't ask to be alive at this time. Number 5, we can all plant for our climate. So getting involved in tree planting schemes, or getting in the garden, growing your own veggies, planting trees for shade. You know, basically trees are pretty cool because, you know, they produce oxygen, you know, photosynthesis, everybody's first equation that you learn in high school. Obviously, let's bit of a shout out to the blue-green algae that also are great sources of reducing CO2. Number 6 is to power for your climate, to switch to a renewable energy provider. You know, this is as simple as switching your bill. And while people are in lockdown, what a good time to be doing that. You know, switch over, get panels and batteries if you can, turn off the gas, and, you know, ask, what is your workplace doing? How are they powering their, you know, at your uni, your hospital, wherever it is. You know, we're allowed to hassle them. We're allowed to advocate. The time for manners is past. This is the time we need to be acting. Number 7 is to transport for your climate. So walking and cycling, you know, this great concept of health code benefits. It's good for your heart, it's good for your planet. Using public transport, electric cars and bikes. I mean, if you've got 50K to spend on a car, get an electric one. You know, not all of us have 50K for a car, but if you do, you should, I think. Electric bikes are fabulous things. I've got one. It's how I mainly get around. You know, and flying is a carbon bomb, because, you know, every time we get an internal combustion engine car, we're at the end of this chain, you know. So, you know, this is something that we can all do. Transport for your climate, encourage your patients to get fit and walk and cycle. Number 8 is to finance for your climate. So divesting your banking, super and insurance from institutions that support fossil fuels to those that don't. Basically, you know, we know that the fossil fuel companies are being funded by these massive banks, and, you know, we're giving them our money. It's a powerful thing you can do. So Market Forces is a great place to go for information on that. I'm sure lots of you know. And Healthy Futures, which has a campaign at the moment to try and get some of the super companies to divest and do the right thing by their planet. Number 9 is to vote for your climate. Now, it's obvious that we need a political response to the climate crisis, and it is an absolutely monstrous thing that in our country we do not have the leadership that we need. Both major parties, I argue, are failing us badly. So, you know, consider climate policy when you vote. If the party you vote for has poor climate policy, then tell them. Our elected representatives are elected to represent us. And, you know, we have the right to tell them off, basically. So, you know, go in, knock on their door, write the letters, organise a visit. You know, I've gone to see my local members a few times. They're usually really polite, you know, because they want your vote. So, you know, go in and talk to them. You can look at this website, Vote Earth Now, which is, I think, the author of which may be in our audience, which talks about the different climate policies of the parties and asks you to pledge to vote for your climate. The square on the right is from the Climate and Health Alliance from the last election, where they basically show that the ALP kind of got 4.5 out of 8, so basically just passed. The Greens got 8 and the Libs and Nats, surprise, surprise, got 0. And the last thing is to act for your climate. get involved in the movement for change. What can you do? What skill do you bring to the table? Because we all bring different skills. We all have different things. We're passionate about different things that work for us. So do the thing that works for you. Most of us, I'm sure, are members of DEA. If you're not, please join us. If you're a GP, please join the RAS, our Climate and Environment Special Interest Group, because fundamentally this is the decade for climate action. Now is the time for us to act to save our beautiful and fragile planet. And, you know, unfortunately, I've lost my clicky. Oh, back on, Denise. We are fated with being alive at the most important decade of human history. So fated, this is an acronym I made, which I'm kind of personally quite chuffed about and think is pretty funny. I don't actually believe in fate, I believe in action. But we are fated with being alive at the most important decade of human history. And F stands for finance, divest your money. A stands for advocacy, get politically active and stand up for your planet. T stands for transport, use feet or use electricity powered by renewables. E stands for energy, which is renewables, and D stands for a plant-rich diet. And this way we can remember all the individual things that we can do, because as doctors, it is absolutely our responsibility. And I really think we can punch above our weight in this space. And with that, I'm going to hand the baton over to Denise. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks, Kate. I have been allocated political advocacy to talk about, or climate action political advocates. And the reason that I think this is important is because the single biggest barrier to action on climate in Australia at the moment is arguably, first slide please, this, politics. Politics on all sides, or all on the major party sides. And we live in the rather bizarre situation where we have industry, business, finance, agriculture leaders, and other sectors who are setting their own emissions reductions targets and crying out to government for clarity, appropriate regulation, targets and standards. But it's falling largely on deaf ears. So the question is, how do we shift the politics on climate? How do we change the political discourse? And I think one of the ways that we can do that is to get climate change to be widely understood as a health issue and not just as an environmental one, and get all sides of politics to understand the impacts of climate change on health, the costs that will be borne by the health system, and the political costs of inaction on such an enormous public health threat. And health is a particularly important and effective frame for all of this because it's relevant to every Australian and cuts through political ideology. And you know, this could help to loosen the political stalemate that we're in. So if we're looking at the, you know, how health professionals can take action, I think there's sort of two main arenas of action where health professionals are well placed to influence the politics on climate change. And the first one is direct political engagement. So as Kate mentioned, you know, talk to your MP about your concerns, about the climate and health issues that you see in your electorate. As Kim was mentioning, you know, what are you seeing in your clinical work? And you can do this by having meetings with them, writing letters, emails. You know, if it's one of those kind of circular emails, just change the subject line so they don't all get lumped together. And all of this is even more effective if you're in a conservative or marginal electorate. So these are things that you can do as an individual, but you know, I think that it's even more effective it's excellent to do that, but more effective to join a group of other people who do advocacy. Because there's strength in unity and power in numbers, but also because particularly the larger organisations, they employ political analysts. So, you know, for example, DEA, we've been working on a set of asks of government, and we have a policy platform. If you're a DEA member and want to find out more, let me know. But you can also join groups that do advocacy that are not necessarily climate or environment specialists. So, you know, medical colleges and associations, you can influence from within by setting up or joining climate change working groups, help them develop their advocacy position, help them write submissions. So, you know, this type of direct engagement relies on influence through the established channels and the established political system there. But I mean, I think in the current political environment where climate inaction is entrenched, this is probably not going to be enough. You know, we can't shift policy through reason and scientific argument alone. But I do believe that the politics will change when our elected representatives feel that it will damage their ability to be elected or re-elected. So this is why the second arena of action where medical professionals can have influence is, cue to next slide, is slide before it, yep, engaging with your communities. So this is about all major parties understanding that their constituents not only want them to lift their game on climate, but are prepared to vote accordingly. Now, we know that the majority of Australians want more action on climate, but it's not necessarily their first priority. If we can go to the next slide. So I don't know how well you can see that, but on the top, this is the priorities of this Australian survey, and I think it's about 10,000 Australians surveyed. The one on the top is economics, and that tends to trump everything. However, health is second, and climate is a close third. So if we can actually link the climate concern and the health concern in people's minds, this could actually be a game changer that lifts climate up to rival economy. And as I mentioned before, this is particularly important in conservative or marginal electorates because we need to reach middle Australia, not preach to the converted. Preaching to the converted is good for other things, but middle Australia has got to shift. And the health sector, and particularly doctors, have got an almost unrivaled capacity to talk to the more politically conservative parts of our society. And many live in Liberal held seats. So research has shown that people are far more influenced by people they trust than by the facts. We know that we tend to form opinions first, according to our values, and then we find evidence to support it, which is disappointing, but that seems to be what happens. So trusted messengers are really important. If you can go to the next slide. Now, on the top of this slide, these are the most trusted professions in Australia in a survey done this year. At the very top, the three top ones are health professionals. And so, you know, and sort of towards the middle there, I don't have the arrow, but towards the middle there are, or towards the bottom actually, are politicians. So health professionals are right up there as trusted members of society. Now, this trust can be leveraged to get climate and health messages across. So, you know, what can you do in your communities to get this across? As other Kate and Kim and John have shown, you know, use the networks you've got and the memberships you've got, particularly the mainstream ones like schools, the CWA, sports clubs, offer to do talks, get on boards and advisory groups and influence from within, write articles for local media and share everything you do on social media. Because I think at this stage, the only way the politics is going to shift is if they think the tide has turned within their constituencies. And health is a really, really powerful tool and a powerful message to do this. And doctors in particular are the trusted messengers who can deliver it. Thanks.
And thank you, Denise. And this is the last slide because, you know, to carry on from that, this is a cheesy medical meme, but we are the antibodies kicking in as the planet fights its fever. And, you know, let's get on and do it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and say hello to people again, because you can see people once you stop screen sharing. And I hope people sort of got some benefit out of that, and really be interested to hear how, you know, if people have any questions, if people have things they want to, you know, say or contribute, or, you know, just comments to make. I'll just have a little look in the chat. Or if there's anybody who wants to ask a question. May I speak, Rob Eisenberg? Yes, Rob Eisenberg, you can. So if you want to unmute yourself, Rob, there you are.
G'day, thank you.
Hi.
thank you, Doctors for the Environment. I'm proud to have finally joined, and I think you're wonderful.
We are.
I'm friends with John van der Kallen, and I've seen a few other faces there. But look, no one wants to hear a surgeon babble on. So what I want you all to do is get this thing out of your pocket. And I'm the founder of Vote Earth Now, and I'd like you all to look at it on your phone. Find voteearthnow.com and have a look at it now and see just how easy it is to do Kate's 9th action. I'm a lazy surgeon, and I'm not like Kim Lou, who can do everything, you know, amazing what she could do. I just had to find the most effective thing I could do. And I thought that was to make politicians do their job. As Bill Gates said last year, politicians have 10 times the power that we have as individuals and a private enterprise has to fight climate change and to make a difference. All we need to do is stop exporting coal. Then the price of coal will go up around the world and renewables will be the cheaper alternative. So if you all look at your phones, I'm so glad to see everybody looking down at their phones that I can see. It's really easy. It takes 30 seconds. So you go to voteearthnow.com, you read it if you like. You can look at my ugly mug, or you can go down further down and read some of the information on how it works. Or you can just press vote now and go straight to the pledge page. On that page, you pledge to be a climate voter at the next election, guided by our climate action score, which was on the front page. And it takes literally 30 seconds with autofill to fill that in, put in your postcode, your electorate should appear. Then you can look at the email you're going to send to your local politician there, and you can decide you're going to share with your friends. As Denise said, you guys are the influencers we need to make this go viral. No one is more respected in society than health professionals. This is the most powerful thing you can do as an individual, as a health professional, is to vote Earth now and to influence your patients and colleagues and everyone you know, your whole community.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I think we've crashed your website. So, you know, that's a pretty good bit of feedback for you.
It's that. Is anyone's working?
I think just lots of people trying to do it at the same time. I think that's pretty fun. And, you know, really that's so lovely, because it's exactly what Denise was saying about trying to show the politicians that we are influencing the electorate. You know, that we are asking our electorate to say we've had enough of the political classes ignoring the human need for action. And, you know, like you've done something that you had the capacity to do, which is a fabulous thing to do. And, you know, I don't think not all of us have the capacity to write a website, because that's actually quite hard. But, you know, like all of us certainly do have the capacity to do, you know, something that resonates with us. And, you know, like, so you look, I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Rob. I think that's a pretty cool bit of climate action there, you know, no pressure, but, you know, good on you. Thank you.
It is going to go much bigger soon, because we need to get attention to force the politicians to act before they call the election. As you know, they all stop acting when the election is called and they just start campaigning. So we want politicians walking into the party room saying, I've got 100 emails here from people in my electorate saying they won't vote for me unless I do something. Yeah. That is what will change them. By all means, follow it up with a meeting with your politician. That's very powerful. But yeah, please just do it and share it. Thanks. Sorry to take up your time.
Oh, no, you're really welcome, Rob. Thank you so much. And, you know, and again, it goes on to the same thing that we've all been saying, is that if we can combine the climate and health message in the minds of people, just normal everyday voters all across the country. And I think that's one of the reasons why doctors are so powerful, is because we're in every community across the country. You know, like we are in rural and urban communities, we are in rich and poor communities, we're in culturally and linguistically diverse communities, we're in First Nations communities. You know, we're there all across this land. And so if we're saying climate change is a health issue and we need climate action on health grounds, and we say it to our patients, and we make our patients realise that climate change is a health issue, then that is a really powerful narrative tool. You know, we have a reach that, you know, lots of political groups would be quite envious of. You know, we can get in there in every group. And so, you know, I think I think we're traditionally a relatively conservative group of people. And, you know, when I first started practicing, I would never have talked about who someone voted for. You know, I would have thought that that was not in my remit to, you know, pass judgment on whether someone voted red or blue or whatever. You know, it was, but what we can say is, you know, oh, you have this health effect of climate change, or climate change is affecting your health in this particular way. And then, you know, really we need political action on health grounds, and then, you know, sort of give it to them. Yeah. I'm speaking too much though. I'd really love to hear from other people in the audience. I can see Louise has got her hand up. Hi, Louise.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to comment. I actually went to a WA infrastructure online meeting this morning. So at the minute there is a body that have been commissioned, the Infrastructure WA, to review obviously all the areas of WA infrastructure, but with overarching strategies. There's quite a lot of documentation online, but it's currently at the stage of final consultation, where you can write a submission about whether you think there's aspects missing from that process, which then is formally put to government and they have to respond to. So the health section and then the overall arching theme of climate change is on there, but there's certainly a lot of opportunity to provide submissions on consultation before that goes to government.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, like always having our voice is important, isn't it? You know, like even though sometimes you can feel like you're writing it again and again and again, you know, like I think it's really important that when we have the opportunity to feed back and be involved with that answer. I'm looking at lots of faces, and I'm just going to scan off to the next page, and no, I'm going back again. So, you know, do other people have questions? Does anyone want to just express something that they really feel about this? Does anyone else want to say anything?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, okay, Grace. And then Claire, I saw your hand go up too.
Sorry, at the risk of repeating myself in the chat, I just wanted to mention one of the things we can do to take action is to do civil disobedience, which is a sort of powerful and historically effective method of taking political action. And so the reason civil disobedience works is because when you show that you're willing to break the law and face, you know, risks and potentially sacrifice, it really underlines that you really mean what you say, and that inspires people, and people tend to respond to that really positively. And one of the other reasons it works well is because it shifts what we call the Overton window, which is sort of the idea of like the sort of things that are possible and reasonable to do. And if you push it out here and you be like the crazy people out there, then the sort of center shifts, and what seems reasonable begins to kind of shift further and further. And so and also I think it sort of underlines that we're actually in an emergency and a crisis, and the sort of action that we need to take is more radical than a lot of the things which are sort of the ordinary sort of business. And I just wanted to mention that several of us who are registered doctors in Brisbane have been arrested in doing climate action, and we didn't have any problems with APRA. We didn't have any problems with our working with children checks. We didn't have any problems with our jobs, and the impacts were relatively small in terms of those are the things that people are usually fearing. So I won't take too much time, but I really want to encourage people who are interested to get in touch, and we would love to do an action with a group of doctors together. I think it would be incredibly powerful, even with a relatively small number of people. So I don't know how and when that could happen, but if people were interested in doing that at any time, that would be amazing. So thank you. I won't take up any more of your time, but you can get in touch with me or look on we've got a Facebook group, Doctors for Extinction Rebellion Australia, which, you can always find us there. Thanks so much.
Right, thank you, Grace. And I do agree with the concept of shifting Overton's window, which is why it's important to make the links between climate change and health. I did see Claire raise her hand. Claire Smith. Hello, Claire. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I would. I'd just like to put a plug in, as I did in the chat, for joining the AMA or turning up. I've been a silent member of the AMA for decades. And as I started to really think about how I could magnify my voice, I decided to start turning up, and I've found that it's actually a really easy group to influence. And so then opportunities came along, like we've had really awful anti-protest laws put forward in Tasmania. So I said the AMA should comment on this. So I wrote to them and said the AMA wants to comment on this. And then when the time came up, it's like, okay, I'll comment. So I got to go and brief the upper house, and that legislation, which was at 8.6 when we went in, 7.7 when we went in, changed to 8.6. So we actually won that case. And that was just my one individual effort to do that. And there are other, like we got Tasmania to declare a climate emergency separately from the rest of Australia. I'm now putting forward a letter to the banks from the AMA, which I'd love them to support. They probably don't want to, but if more of us were there and there was a real groundswell from all the members saying, yeah, we want letters to the banks. We want to write to the banks as doctors and say, how dare you? Like, that's one of the most powerful avenues we've got. I'm in the DEA, I'm in Extinction Rebellion, I'm in Parents for Climate. I mean, I'm in so many things, but I find that, like, strategically, I think the most powerful with the most opportunity, because COVID's given the AMA really high prominence. Chris Moy's on the news every second day, or Omar. And so if we can influence them, then they'll keep putting that message forward, but they only respond to what the members say. So that's my point, basically. So think of joining and come and help.
Completely agree, because I've been known as a climate advocate and called the government criminals in several rallies, and I was tapped on the shoulder to join the AMA and voted in. So I think the fact that members actually know what I did, and it was in all the papers when I called the government criminals for allowing fossil fuels to continue, yeah, it shows they're changing. So the more of us who are in AMA with a passion for climate advocacy, the more effective it will be in terms of acting on it. And
I'll just add to that as well. I mean, DEA has been working with the AMA now for many years, actually, and I think that alliance is really starting to come to fruition. We have that memorandum of understanding, and in a fortnight we have a webinar combined between the two of us, and we've invited all the colleges to speak about what their actions on climate change are. And I think at the moment we have 14 colleges who are going to be represented. So we're still really putting them on the spot about what they're actually going to do. So, you know, that's definitely worth pursuing the AMA. And I think we have influence in each of the states and federally as well now.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? It's
Right.
so exciting. And, you know, that, as you know, as Claire said, you know, like the world's run by those that turn up. You know, and if you turn up, you can make a big difference, because lots of people are just sitting on their couch, you know, watching Netflix, right? Yeah. We are almost at time. I did just post a link in the chat to, which is, we're all talking so much, which I love. I love when people actually use the chat and use it as a way of communicating. But there is a link there from me for those who want to get their points from the RACGP, if you are GPs. And as I said, I really would ask people to do that, because then it shows the college how keen we all are, and, you know, how much we want climate action on health. And Denise has just posted the link to the DEA webinar, DEA AMA webinar on the September the 14th. And I think that's going to be absolutely fabulous as well. And I wonder if Denise or John or Kim, if you've got anything else you'd like to say, any sort of parting comments, or if there's anyone else in the audience who would like to contribute and say something, wave at me and we'll get you to talk.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming, really, and showing some passion in this issue. It's really important that we have everybody involved as much as possible. And, you know, every little bit that we do makes a difference. And together the resistance is softening, and we can win this, you know. Sorry, Annabelle, cut you off.
Oh, no worries at all. My name's Annabelle. I'm an endocrinology fellow. I just wanted to make a quick plug for a campaign that Healthy Futures is running. I've been volunteering with. They are looking to put some real political pressure on AGL at the moment, which is Australia's biggest polluter. I know that Greenpeace are running a concurrent campaign, but health professionals, as we've heard from the fantastic presentations tonight, can really have an outsized impact. So Healthy Futures are looking to get signatures for a petition to AGL from as many health professionals as possible. And so an AGL, with their coal-fired electricity, they're actually responsible for 8% of Australia's emissions. It's the most of any company in Australia. So I'll post the link to their campaign there. And then there's also going to be an upcoming online day of action. Unfortunately, there was a planned in-person action in Melbourne that will probably, unfortunately, not go ahead. And so, but there'll be, if you sign the petition, I'm sure you'll be linked in with the opportunities for that. So just another avenue for making it an impact. And I think Kim's been involved in that as well. But thank you all.
Thank you, Annabelle. That's fabulous. And Kim, come and tell us what you want to say.
So I'm so grateful that so many people turned up tonight. I must say, when I started 6 years ago, there was less momentum. And really with the environmental disasters and extreme weather, we've got more members and more doctors worried about climate change now. And so this is, if anyone wants to talk to me specifically, because I pretty much know the networks and what the specific things that can be done and all the organizations, if anyone, I'm going to post my mobile phone number in the chat, text your name before you actually, so I know who you are. And I'm happy to talk to people about this because I want more people in the movement, but sometimes it's really hard to know where to start. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about what they can do because I have an idea of what's happening in New South Wales.
You've got a really generous heart, Kim. That's really lovely. Denise, I think you'd like to say something too.
Yep, I was just going to say this is a really huge year in a really huge decade for climate action. We've got the UN climate talks coming up in November, COP, and a federal election probably very soon after that. So all I can say is please just do anything at all. We can all do, so we can't do everything, but we can all do something. And there are loads and loads of things that can be done. I'm going to pop my email in the chat if anyone wants to talk about that. But yeah, I think you're probably all very active anyway, but if you want to become more active, then let me know.
Good on you, Denise. And there's lots of different ways you can be involved within DEA. I think it caters to all different needs for so many of us. I think it's great like that. And we've got the Healthy Futures link in the app, in the chat as well. And I also put in a link to the ODEA conference, which is in October, where we will have 2.5 days looking at a current appraisal of the now of the climate crisis. And then the whole of Sunday is all about climate action. So, solutions focused because, it's hard not to be overwhelmed. It's hard not to be terrified, but we have to find our avenues for hope. And, there's a lot of hope within health and there's also hope within other professions. And we'll talk about that at the conference. I think somebody else wanted to say something though, so please do. Or was that it? Quiet. We're quiet. All right. Well, look, thank you all so much for taking the time to come along and be part of this evening's webinar. I hope that you found it enjoyable or valuable, and I hope that you've all going to walk out of this thinking, okay, I have something now that I think I can do to be climate active as a health practitioner. All right. And Kim, you've got one more. Go, Kim.
One more, yes. So if anyone, I think I'm happy to, because I'm actually a trainer for lobbying with Citizens Climate Lobby, and that's how I teach people how to lobby politicians or corporations. So if you want to set up a webinar regarding that, I'm happy to, if anyone's interested from this group.
Good on you, Kim. All right. And the next time you see me will be at IDEA, and then we'll do another thing in November on planetary health and nature prescribing. Thank you to everybody who came along tonight. Thank you for those who spoke and contributed to the meeting. Really do appreciate all the work that so many of us are doing to try and create a healthy planet. And all right, see you at the next time. Okay, bye.